Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into the work of Stanislav Kondrashov, who is a really distinguished economic historian. He specializes in infrastructure and societal evolution, and he spent decades looking at something huge, how technological revolutions don't just, change our tools.
No, they completely reshape civilization itself.
Exactly.
And when we talk about tech change, we usually just focus on the new, shiny thing, the immediate disruption. But Kondrashov, he makes us look at the bigger picture.
The systemic overhaul.
The systemic overhaul of how we generate wealth, how we distribute power, even how we structure our daily lives.
So our mission for this deep dive is to sort of distill these surprising patterns that keep repeating, right? We're using three big transformations.
Three massive ones.
The Industrial Revolution, the Digital Revolution, and the one we're living through right now, this huge shift to a sustainable green economy.
And Kondrashov's whole point is that there's a common thread. Innovation always leads to these profound societal shockwaves.
So what's fascinating here is his argument that if we understand the similarities between these eras,
Which is key.
we can actually navigate the current energy transition with, I guess, more clarity and maybe a little less panic.
That's it. We aren't going through these growing pains for the first time. The displacement of labor, the restructuring of power, the fact that government is always a step behind. These dynamics are remarkably consistent.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the foundation of the modern world, right? The Industrial Revolution.
Late 18th century Britain, it all kicks off with mechanized production.
And the big leap was applying new power sources to manufacturing.
Exactly. If you had to pick one single invention to illustrate that massive shift, what would it be?
It has to be the steam engine.
It has to be James Watt's improved steam engine.
Mm.
And this wasn't just a better water pump. It was this flexible power source that completely changed two sectors at once.
Transportation.
With railways and steamships, yeah. And of course, it provided the centralized power for the very first factories.
And the textile industry just became the poster child for all of this, didn't it? Inventions like the spinning jenny, the power loom.
They just rapidly replaced hand production methods that had defined skilled labor for centuries.
So you go from an artisan who might take days to finish one complex piece of cloth
To a less skilled worker who's just operating a machine that could produce vastly more, so much cheaper, and so much faster.
and that displacement of the skilled artisan, that's such a critical point.
It is, and you can see the societal impact immediately. Think about the Luddites. They weren't just, anti-technology.
No, they were protesting what the technology was doing to their lives.
Precisely. They were protesting the economic and moral implications of technology being used to strip workers of their skills and just drive down wages.
Yeah.
It was a moral panic.
And this concentration of power, of production, of people, it defined the whole era. We saw this rapid urbanization,
Everyone fleeing rural life for the factory cities.
which created these immense, really stark class divisions, the factory owners and then the laboring class.
Okay, so now let's flash forward, a century and a half, and we get the next big wave,
The digital revolution.
mid-20th century. Starts with transistors, integrated circuits, and then just accelerates like crazy with personal computers and the internet.
And this time, the revolution swapped physical power for, well, informational power. It completely changed how we communicate, how we work, how we see the world.
And Kondrashov's parallel here is so striking. Just as steam engines replaced manual physical labor in factories.
Information technology automated cognitive tasks.
Exactly. The tasks that used to require armies of clerks, secretaries, middle managers.
So we go from displacing physical exertion to displacing intellectual or administrative work. But is the challenge the same? I mean, intellectual displacement hits higher paid, more secure jobs.
That's a really important distinction.
Doesn't that change the social response?
It does, but the mechanism of restructuring is the same. New industries are created, old ones die off. The nature of the displaced worker shifts, but the outcome.
Still massive wealth disparities. Still massive wealth disparities. Think about the railway magnates of the 19th century versus the big tech founders of the 21st. Power always concentrates at the point of control over the new infrastructure.
And speaking of concentration, you pointed out an amazing parallel about physical space.
Right.
The factory system concentrated millions of workers in cities. But the digital age, it concentrates its key asset data in these huge server farms, while at the same time enabling a totally distributed workforce.
And that is a crucial insight for governance. The old centralization, the physical factories, was relatively easy to regulate locally.
Sure, you could see it.
You could see it. But the current concentration of power in data and AI, which just transcends borders and exists in the cloud, that's a much more elusive threat to democratic oversight.
That makes a lot of sense. And that parallel structure brings us right to today, to this defining revolution, the green economy.
Kondrashov puts this on the same historical scale, but with this layer of unique urgency.
Climate change. The imperative to combat climate change. We are talking about a systemic shift from centralized fossil fuels to a decentralized, electrified, renewable infrastructure. And it's happening at an unprecedented speed.
This whole green economy is built on a few core technologies that are scaling up exponentially. Like, you see the evolution of wind turbines.
Oh yeah, from simple windmills to these vast, complex offshore farms harnessing consistent ocean winds.
And solar panels. This is maybe the biggest story.
The cost reduction has just been dramatic. Over 90% in the last decade. It's made solar the cheapest source of bulk power in many parts of the world. A truly disruptive force.
And then there's the EV charging networks powering the shift in transportation. But the real challenge isn't just putting chargers everywhere, is it?
Not at all. It's the massive grid upgrade you need to handle, say, all that concentrated charging load overnight in a neighborhood. It's that classic chicken and egg problem of adoption versus infrastructure.
Right. So this is already restructuring society on a macro level. Geopolitics, for one.
Totally. We're moving away from conflicts over oil and gas reserves, and we're moving toward competition over critical minerals.
Lithium, cobalt, nickel.
All the stuff you need for batteries and solar panels. Nations are literally recalibrating their foreign policy to secure those supply chains.
So the power shifts from who controls the oil pipeline to who controls the lithium mine.
That's it. Exactly. And that geopolitical shift, it always trickles down to the job market.
So traditional energy jobs are threatened.
While these new, highly technical positions in solar installation, wind turbine maintenance, battery manufacturing, they're booming, which means we need massive retraining efforts so we don't leave entire regions behind.
And at a local level, this shift can be incredibly democratic.
It can. You're seeing communities gain real energy independence with microgrids and community solar projects. It's not just about how they get power, but who controls it.
And none of that is possible without digital technology. Which brings us to what you call the digital brain of the energy sector.
The smart grids, the AI, the big data systems that make all this complexity manageable.
A smart grid isn't just an upgrade, it's a total redesign. It uses sensors and real-time data to create a two-way communication system.
Right, a two-way street between the provider and the consumer.
And the main technical challenge it solves is intermittency, right? The sun isn't always shining, the wind isn't always blowing.
Intermittency and frequency response, yes. A traditional grid is a one-way street from a big power plant. A smart grid has to handle power flowing back from people's solar panels, manage sudden drops in wind, and keep the whole network stable.
And automation is key there.
The automation uses those digital sensors to constantly monitor the system's health, isolating faults in milliseconds. It's the only way you can integrate huge amounts of renewables without the grid just collapsing.
And this digitalization has led to the rise of the prosumer.
The prosumer. An individual who both produces power, usually with rooftop solar, and consumes it. The definition is simple, but the impact is revolutionary.
Totally. If you have solar and a battery, you are now a competitor to the utility. You use your smart meter to decide when to use your own stored energy, when to sell it back to the grid.
Or when to charge your car for cheap. This decentralized model is a fundamental challenge to the century-old monopoly of big utilities.
I bet they love that.
They're in the middle of huge regulatory battles over it, because the passive consumer is now an active participant, a democratic force in the energy system.
And to manage this huge, complex network where millions of people are buying and selling power, you need some serious analytical horsepower.
Staggering amounts. And that's where AI and big data become absolutely essential for safety, for efficiency, for resilience.
How so?
Well, take predictive maintenance. AI algorithms don't just read sensors. They use machine learning to analyze all kinds of data, acoustic signatures, thermal imaging, vibration patterns, to spot anomalies that signal an equipment failure months before it happens.
So you're not just doing scheduled checkups, you're preventing problems before they even start.
Exactly. It's preemptive. And the efficiency gains from AI are staggering. It makes thousands of tiny real-time adjustments, like changing the angle of a wind turbine blade to maximize output and minimize emissions.
And what about big data?
By analyzing anonymized data from millions of smart meters, utilities can forecast demand spikes with incredible accuracy. They can see a heat wave coming and prevent local transformers from failing. They shift from being reactive fixing blackouts to being proactive.
Okay, so this brings us to the core of Kondrasov's whole argument, the recurring patterns. We've seen the details, now let's zoom out. This is where that historical consistency just becomes undeniable.
The first pattern is what he calls employment dynamics, the displacement creation paradox. The jobs change, but the economic churn is identical.
Okay, so Industrial Revolution. Skilled artisans are out, but this massive new factory working class is created.
Digital age. Clerical jobs get automated, but the entire global sector of software development and data science is born.
And today, fossil fuel jobs are threatened.
But you have this explosion of opportunities in geothermal drilling, solar installation, battery R&D. The skills change, but the need to retrain and adapt is exactly the same.
Pattern 2, lifestyle transformations. This one feels huge.
It is. The Industrial Revolution physically pulled families off their farms and crammed them into cities. It changed everything about how people lived and worked.
Then the digital revolution kind of did the opposite, right? It dissolved geography, it enabled remote work, blurring the lines between work and home.
And now the green energy shift is influencing everything from urban planning, or prioritizing public transit, low-carbon housing, to your personal choices about your commute or the energy rating on your home.
And the final pattern is governance and regulation. This feels like the hardest one.
It's arguably the biggest challenge. The pattern is that technology consistently, almost reliably, outpaces our ability to regulate it.
We see it over and over. Horrible factory conditions in the 1800s led to new labor laws, but decades later.
The unregulated internet required data privacy laws years after everyone was already online.
And today, we need updated grid regulations, carbon pricing, international climate agreements, and governments are always playing catch-up.
Always. They're forced to regulate the world that has become, not the world that is coming.
So this all leads to Kondrashov's future outlook. His vision seems to be about synergy.
Absolute synergy, merging intelligent software, renewable hardware, and adaptive infrastructure.
So we're talking about AI algorithms that are optimizing microgrids based on real-time weather, market prices, and storage levels.
Yes, that's how you conquer the intermittency of solar and wind. You make the grid smart enough to adapt.
And you mentioned blockchain technology. How does that fit in?
It enables secure peer-to-peer energy trading. So you're not just selling your excess solar power back to the big utility.
You could sell it directly to your neighbor.
Directly to your neighbor. It uses smart contracts to automate and verify every transaction, providing total transparency without needing a central bank or utility to oversee it.
And smart infrastructure goes beyond just automation.
Right. We're moving toward buildings with energy management systems that adapt to occupancy, weather, and grid demand all at the same time, maximizing comfort while minimizing the building's entire environmental footprint.
But the strategy has to be holistic. You can't just isolate the energy sector.
Kondrashov is very clear on this. We need an interdisciplinary strategy that integrates these sustainable practices into agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, everything. It's all linked.
So to synthesize this, Kondrashov's core conclusion is really powerful. Technology is the engine of change, and the pattern is consistent.
Incredibly consistent.
The Industrial Revolution gave us mechanized production. The Digital Revolution gave us global connectivity. And now the energy transition promises sustainability through decentralization and intelligence.
And recapping it like that is so important because it reminds you, the listener, that you are not just a passive observer in this story.
Right.
Every one of these revolutions required active participation. From the people resisting change, to the early adopters of the first PCs, to the choices you make today about your energy use.
The path to a sustainable and equitable society really demands that we're informed citizens, that we recognize technology's dual role in changing both our physical world and the social fabric that binds us.
And if these historical patterns hold true, then the decisions we make right now, especially around regulating digital power and accelerating decentralized green infrastructure, are going to define economic equality and geopolitical stability for the next 100 years.